Live fire from the African bushveld, coming to you on Wild Earth Safari. Fireside Chat starting in a couple of minutes.
Am I recording this?
No. Yeah. Don't know. What did Seb say? Are we on the fire? Zooming in. Huh? Well, you should hear Craig if you got the radio on. Okay, picture should be live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Fireside Chat this evening. My name is Mark. This is Wild Earth Safari on a Sunday evening. And normally on a Sunday evening we sit around a fire, and sometimes we have guests. Sometimes I sit here alone, or Tara sits here alone, and we do a fireside chat and we chat about things. Tonight I'm alone, as you can see, and I'm going to chat about a few things first, and if I run out of things to say, I'm going to show you a few photos perhaps of some of the smaller things that we don't get to see too much of on drive, or if we do, we don't see them too well. Just apologies for such a late fireside chat. I have to say that most of it is my fault. As the one who was directing the PM drive, I should have known to bring Tara in a lot earlier because our batteries are running at a critical level, and game drive went on a little bit too long, so we ran the batteries down on the vehicle, which meant that we couldn't really broadcast the fireside chat when we planned to, and we've had to come up with an alternative at the last minute to hook up the camera and everything else to FSC. Ordinarily we would have had some extra power on the vehicles, but with the late drives, or rather with the latest changes in times for drives, we're getting a very narrow margin in between our drives, between morning drive and PM drive, that requires charging of the batteries, and it isn't really sufficient. So from now on, going through the dry season, or what we term winter, we are going to have to be very, very critical about how long we run the game drive vehicle, both after morning drive and after evening drive. We're going to have a very long evening, or rather night, to charge up the batteries, but as far as that daytime period is concerned, we are going to have to be a little bit more careful about running late on game drive times. We're going to calculate our battery time as far as that is concerned. Well, that aside, we're finally with you, and you're finally here with us at the fireside. And I think to begin with, I'm going to chat about a few things that we've seen this last week, which is quite normal, what we like to do on a Sunday evening. And I would like you to send in questions a little bit later, if possible, maybe on something that we're discussing. But I don't know if we'll get there. Sometimes the chat goes on for a little bit too long and we don't get time for a Q&A at the end. And I'm hoping that we might be able to. I did select a few photographs that I would like to show you, some of the things that I've talked about on drive. And not as many as I would like, because there were a lot of things that I talked about on drive that I noticed when I was downloading photographs from my camera. And it just ties in with a lot of things that I say when I'm out on drive, and I'm referring to maybe things that I've seen back home or things that we've seen here. And well, anyways, we'll try and get to that at some point. But we've had a very, very interesting week. And I think one of the best things of all, culminating in today's drive, PM drive, which I was so envious of, was the return of elephants to Western Gari and to Djuma. And it's been fantastic. We've had these family units come in, and in a remarkable social interaction that we're seeing, something that was seen very rarely, is what Tara and Daniel managed to find today, starting with today. This afternoon was this collection of family groups that get together and socialize. And while they still tend to stick in their individual family groups, the young boys get a chance to try out their strength and their sparring techniques with some of the little boys from other family groups. And it's almost like this big family or group picnic that one might find in the summer months, where lots of families come together and the little boys all go off and play together and the little girls stick to mom and looking after babies. And I know it's kind of stereotyping the little girls and the little boys, but, well, that is how they are. And as you noticed today, it was really a lot of fun with the little boys pushing each other around. There was one fantastic moment, I thought, where there was a bigger bull who was almost lying down, and a younger bull came up to him, and because he was lying down, they were almost the same size. And it was quite incredible how the younger bull tried to goad him, and then once he got up, and of course he was twice the size, the younger bull moved off. It was great seeing those big bulls around the family groups. They were obviously socializing with them. They were obviously coming in to see maybe some of their calves, but also maybe some of their family units that they grew up with, and coming back to socialize with them, because after all, these bulls don't spend all their time with these family groups or these breeding herds. And it's really an unusual thing to see these bulls come in and walk around and meet and greet all the females and the calves in the family group. And right at the beginning, one of the most interesting things that I thought was that one big bull that had his trunk smelling that one female tested. He was obviously testing her receptibility in terms of her estrus condition. And we really get to see the kind of interaction between bulls and cows and calves that was going on at Twin Dams. But I really understand both Tara and Daniel's dilemma. And when you've got so many elephants around, where do you point the camera? Because once you're looking at one thing, you've got another 10 things going on around you, and there's no other analogy to put to it other than a kid in a candy shop. So it must have been fantastic to see that. I think moving on from that, I think we've been very lucky this week. We've had 3 cats here at Djuma Game Reserve, and for us that's really great. We've had lion, leopard and cheetah, the 3 big cats that we get here in Africa. And although we didn't have much time with the sticks, the 2 lionesses that came through, and we sadly didn't get to see any of the males that left their tracks around here, we did manage to follow them. We spent some time with them. And I think at this juncture that I'd like to just mention to a lot of you, maybe some of you who are quite new to Wild Earth Safari, that it's very critical that when we're with cats at night and they are hunting, that we switch the lights off. Tara showed you that this evening, and I know the other evening when I was with the 2 female lionesses and they were very clearly stalking something, it was necessary to switch the lights off. And I know at that time there are a lot of new viewers who are very, maybe not confused, but they're maybe not as patient, and a lot of you might not understand why it is that we do these things. So I think this is a really good opportunity for me to tell you that we don't want to influence the outcome of any of the hunts, either in favor of the predator or in favor of the prey. And to be able to do that, it is necessary to sit in the dark during a hunt at night and wait for the sounds. And it's only when you hear the sounds that you can switch lights on, because there are very distinct sounds that happen when animals make a kill. And one of the most distinct and maybe a bit heart-wrenching and blood-curdling is the sound of animals being killed by lion, leopard or cheetah, whatever the case may be. Every animal has a death cry. And while it is exciting to wait and listen for that cry, it's not the best thing to hear. It's also not the best thing to see. And sometimes it does us, or rather, if I could put it a different way, it's a lot better for us to actually sit in the dark rather than watch this whole thing play out in bright spotlight. Because in bright light, if we're throwing the spotlight on these animals while they're hunting, we're invariably giving the advantage to the predator as close to the kill as possible. During the hunt, we can give advantage to the prey, and we can let them see the predator, and they can disappear. And I'm sure a lot of you who are very passionate about animals and things would like that to happen, because you don't want to see a kill. But we can't interfere. It might be that critical moment where a predator's energy levels are very, very low, and they've already made several attempts at a hunt. They need to make this hunt work, otherwise they don't eat, they don't replenish their energy supplies, and it's under those circumstances that we would be negligent if we shone the lights on. So there are sometimes in the evening, when it does get dark, especially with this camera, that it is necessary to put the lights out. And sometimes people will maybe log on at that moment. They might hear somebody talking, they might not have a picture, and there might be a little bit of frustration. But all we ask is a little bit of patience and a little bit of understanding that we would love to watch these things happen, but at night it is impossible. Kills we can see during the day. At night we have to sit and wait in the dark and wait for the sounds. Other than that, it was great to see the cheetah today. Tara was lucky. I have to be honest, I only saw it from the monitors here in FC, but this morning I thought maybe it was a single male. And then I started thinking maybe it's that male that comes through here, the male that had that interaction with Mishu about a year ago. But it was quite clearly an adult female. And I'd maybe like to ask some of you who've been viewers for quite some time now, if you can compare the facial markings of that female that I was with up on Sandy Patch. Oh gosh, I don't know when that was. It must have been early summer, because she and her cub were hunting, and the cub nailed, or rather took down 2 impala lambs in such a short space of time. And they took down an impala lamb. We watched them eat it, almost completely devour that carcass. And then that youngster moved off and actually made another kill within about another 15 minutes. And that was at the end of drive. And I can remember I was saying goodbye to everybody, and in the background this female and her cub were under a guarri bush behind me, and I was looking at the camera, and I wasn't even looking at them. And it was only after we started looking at footage that we noticed, and I think it was somebody that brought it up for us, that somebody noticed that lamb, or rather the young cheetah actually picked up one of its second kill, that impala lamb, and moved it off into the shade. So it had made a second kill, and we didn't even notice it, because we were sitting where the previous kill was. We were watching vultures, and when I went to see them a second time, I had actually turned around and I was looking at the camera. But what I wanted to ask you is if you could if any of you had some screenshots of that cheetah from that particular time when they were up on Sandy Patch with the calf, or not calf, sorry, with that cheetah cub and the lamb, the impala lamb, any photos of that female, and maybe compare it to that female cheetah today, because it might be interesting to note that cheetah cub, having made its own successful kills, and that was several months ago, it was at least in December, so it might be 4 or 5 months ago, that cheetah was I'd say about 18 months old at the time, which makes it around about 2 years old by now. Could very well be that was the beginning of that young cheetah cub's life of independence away from its mother. Its mother realizing that it was old enough to hunt on its own, albeit an impala lamb or 2 impala lambs in one morning. But that might have been the end of her commitment to that youngster. And it might be the same female that we're seeing now. We're not likely to see that many different cheetah coming through the area, because cheetah do have, although they don't have a very strict territory like the leopards and the lions, they do have quite a strict home range, because they have to know where their open areas are to hunt. They have to know where the water is. They have to know the other predators, the competition that they have in the area, and they're not likely to be moving into a totally unknown area as adults. So it'd be very interesting to be able to see that. I'm going to see what I can do from my side. I did take, a few photographs of that cheetah a few months ago, and I think I heard Tara's camera today taking a few photographs, and I think it'd be nice to compare those 2 facial markings of these 2 cats to try and see whether it is the same cat, and finding out whether she's finally on her own again, and whether she's let go of the cub that she had. Because what that will mean is that she's going to be coming to estrus again during our dry season, and maybe giving birth to cubs again coming into the new spring, summer, well, whenever that may be. We don't see the cheetah that often, but it doesn't mean we can't keep track of the same individuals, even if we only see them once every 2 or 3 months. And I think in the last 6 months we've seen more cheetah here at Djuma Game Reserve than we have in the previous 18 months. And I think maybe it's got something to do with cheetah realizing that there are still hunting opportunities here. Now, speaking of these hunting opportunities, this was a perfect example today that cheetah aren't strictly open area hunters. And I've seen this here in the Sabi Sand as well. I've seen it in Manyaleti on many occasions, where cheetah will take advantage of a situation where there are animals, as they're moving from one open area to another, they will take advantage of the fact that there are things like warthog or impala, maybe duiker and steenbok, to hunt in thicker vegetation. And if they're close enough to make a strike without those animals seeing them, they are likely to hunt. Now that The area today is a very difficult area for even a leopard to hunt in on account of those long grasses. So it was quite an impressive feat for that cheetah female to have been able to kill that impala. Cheetah, it was wonderful to have them back here. I know some of you have been with us for a long time and you've missed cheetah on other occasions, so it's wonderful to be able to have them back again. Well, at least one, and hopefully maybe tomorrow. I think I'm on drive in the morning. Maybe we'll be able to find her again. I hope so, and I don't know. Moving on, back to another cat. I think another fantastic thing, although we didn't get to see it, and it would have been really phenomenal to be able to be present at the time, was news that Yambilu Yodan was present on an impala kill with Karula and the two cubs. And once again, this is blowing all sorts of written rules about how leopard behave out of the behavioral books. In that we've got very young cubs, and we have a male leopard and a female leopard together with the cubs on one kill. We have seen it before. We've seen it with Mishu and Induna, and even Saseka was there at one time. But I think any book that you read, I think you've got to take a lot of that information based on where it was, or where those animals were when it was written. And you've got to understand that animals don't read books. Animals don't go by a guideline of what their behavior is. That every different area in Africa has a different habitat. It has different densities of prey species, different densities of other predators, even different densities of the same prey species, or rather the same predators, which translates into different behavior, different character traits, different interaction with what we call intraspecific and interspecific behavior. And that means the interactions between other species and interactions between the same species. And what might happen here in the Sabi sand, because the concentrations are different to maybe other areas in Kruger, and that is not even taking an area as far away as the Serengeti or the Okavango Delta or West Africa. Every single little wildlife area in Africa, and it's not limited to countries, because countries, in one country you will have different wildlife, different habitats, different environments, and every single environment, every single habitat will dictate what the behavior of the animal is. So animal behavior is not something that you can write about and say, this is what a leopard does, or this is what a cheetah does, and make that same information work for any other area. We're not talking about robots. As I've said, I think on drives before. I mean, even here in South Africa, we have leopards in the mountains in the Cape that are completely different in their makeup and in their hunting abilities and strategies to the leopards here in Kruger. I think I might even go as far as saying that they're starting to think that those leopards down in the Cape are a different species, if not a different subspecies, because they are a lot smaller and they are a lot, well, they have been isolated from these Kruger populations for a long time, so the divergence is probably quite great in terms of the genetic pool. Having said that, we've had some cats, we've had some fantastic times with elephants. I think this has been one of those weeks where, if I'm not mistaken, we haven't even seen a rhino. We have had rhino around, we've seen a lot of tracks. Yesterday there were 2 rhino up on Cheetah Cut Line. I didn't get to them, and I was wondering if it's not that male with that young female that we see, those 2 lovebirds together. I didn't find out what it was. But what is interesting is that up on the Kruger boundary, there were 12 rhino, I think it was 12 that were seen together in one crash. And that would be impressive. Whether it was any of our rhino from here that might have joined up, and whether they also engage in the same kind of socializing that elephants do, that is a question that will take years to answer. And I'm hoping that in the weeks to come we're going to see some of those rhino that are coming back into our area. I'm hoping to find out from some of the guides if any of those rhino up on Kruger, on the Kruger boundary, are any of the rhino that we had here. Other than that, all the migrants are gone. We're reaching that time of the year when we're going into the dry season. We've had some, I'd say maybe a little bit unusual rain. We already, well, today's the 1st of May, but end of April, we're having these grey skies and weather moving around, that by now we should be going into dry days and clear skies. So it is a little bit unusual. The summer months or rather the summer rainfall and the summer season does last into the end of April, but it should be tapering off now. and if anything, we've seen a sort of a resurgence of weather phenomena, low pressure areas moving in, bringing in rain, almost like Cape weather. And I think it's this next week or two that is coming to see whether or not we're going to be going into this dry period. What it is going to do, especially with the dampness on the ground and the dampness that there is, it is going to bring colder temperatures, and it is going to have an influence on animal behavior. We're going to see what that is all about. On another front, the impala are very busy. We've seen that, and that is fun to watch, and we're going to maybe seeing a lot more of that. I think going into May now, we're going to be looking at the height of the rutting season. We're going to start seeing maybe a little bit more intensive competition between the impala rams and the segregation of impala groups as the rams find their harems and move their harems into what we call their little territory, or their little leks, their little bowls that they've opened, or arenas would be another word, that they've created to herd their females and to keep other males at bay. Daniel and I the other day saw quite a remarkable thing with 6 impala rams chasing each other in circles, all trying to establish a hierarchy to see who the one that's going to take over the next group of females, or challenge the local ram for access to the females. And it's going to be nice to be able to watch that happen. I'm hoping we're going to be able to see it. I'm hoping we're going to be able to see the change of ownership of a herd. And it's only really going to be possible with 1 or 2 impala herds that we've got now, where there's a ram that has a distinctive feature, like one of the rams that has a broken horn. That at the moment, there's one on quarantine, I think, the open area, and there's that ram up on Cheetah Cut Line close to Gowrie, Maine, who's also got one of his horns is broken. And it'll be interesting to see how long he takes ownership of that group of females and manages to mate with them. Interesting times ahead. We're changing seasons, temperatures are changing, we're going to see what happens. I think the last thing I want to talk about, just an update, is our crocodile here at Gowrie Dam. And well, he's taking on the name of Spike. I think it's quite appropriate. He's quite a character. He's very big. He was lying between 2 big buffalo bulls the other day. I'm surprised he didn't do anything to them. He's so greedy. But by the sounds of things, he's had a couple of impala, and he's had that Nyala ram. I don't know how far he's got with that Nyala ram, but the drier it gets, the more likelihood we have of this crocodile staying in Gowrie Dam for the dry season. The dam is very, very full. Having had such late rains, there is still a fair amount of runoff, which is still feeding water into the dam at a very, very slow rate. But it might not be offsetting the evaporation, but it is maybe slowing down the level of the water dropping. And I think we have a fairly good chance, and I should touch wood, my toe, that he's going to stay here for the dry season, because I have no doubt that as the water starts dropping, and this Ludwigia, this floating plant, as it starts receding in the colder weather, we're going to maybe have a lot more sightings of him. And once the camera is up at the dam and it's fully operational, there might be some interesting times ahead going through the dry season with this crocodile hunting. Something that I don't think we've really had on our Wild Earth Safari cameras. Noises. Anyways, having said that, I did choose a few photographs for you, and I'm going to start. I mentioned a little dwarf hibiscus, or a miniature hibiscus, that I've seen a few specimens of here, but this is for the ladies, of course. That's my flower of the day for the ladies. This dwarf hibiscus that I have up at home, and I wanted to show you a picture because I think I did speak about it a little while ago, and how those blossoms, when they close up in the evenings, how red they get. And I've got a picture for you of one open flower and one of those closing flowers in the late afternoons. Well, that's the flower that I wanted to show you, and I'm going to move on to a few insects and reptiles, only because I have mentioned them on Drive, and I'm going to try and do this maybe a little bit more frequently, because I do mention things on Drive, and I think it'd be nice to be able to show you some of the things that I do mention on Drive. So another thing that I've got was very unusual. In fact, a couple of things I have for you this evening, not too many of them that are unusual. There are others that I'm saved for another time. And this was that day that we were on the western edge of quarantine. It's not from home. This was a few days ago. We were on the western edge of quarantine, and there was this guinea fowl brown, a butterfly, and I found some net-winged beetles that were, I don't know whether they were feeding on that grass stalk, what was happening, but that butterfly was, you could see in the one picture, I think I got a second picture of it with its wings closed, one with its wings open, one with the wings closed. You can see that its tongue is out, and it's actually taking in nutrients or moisture from wherever these beetles were feeding. And sorry, I'm getting smoke in my eyes. The wind has changed. But for me, I don't miss an insect. I see things that other people don't see, and insects are one of the most interesting and intricate creatures that live on this planet because their lives are so involved. But to have seen this butterfly with these two mating net-winged beetles, they were called net-winged beetles, and I just thought that was interesting. I just thought that was a unique thing. I mean, it's about as unique as seeing a leopard feeding with a hyena on a carcass. And moving from insects to reptiles, I was very lucky one day coming back to camp. As I was coming back after my leave, there was a baby white-throated monitor, also known as a rock monitor, in the road, and it was actually quite relaxed, believe it or not. I have to admit, I seemed to sense that there was something wrong with it. I have had the occasion to be around hatchlings and very young monitors, and they're very fast, and they are very, very timid. They have to be, because there's so many predators of theirs. And this youngster was sitting in the road. I drove past it. It didn't even move. I actually reversed the vehicle and got out. I even had one of the Timbavati rangers who was doing an anti-poaching patrol come by. He was quite curious as to what I was doing, because not many people, I think, get out of their cars on that main road. And he was quite interested in it as well. But there's a very dark mark on its throat, and there's a dark mark under its chin, which I know is possibly a bruising. I don't know whether it was in a fight. But it was still quite feisty. When I tried to get close to it with the camera, it turned into a typical monitor. It tried to lash out with its tail, and it raised its front off of the ground. And but it was beautiful. I mean, this was only about maybe 10 inches long for a monitor that grows to maybe 2 feet, sometimes maybe a bit longer, 2 to 3 feet. I think I'm not too sure if I put up 1 or 2 photos of it. There was supposed to be a close-up, but I don't know if I managed to get that. But that was a young white-throated monitor. A lot of people call it a rock monitor. Its scientific name is Varanus, which are all the monitors. Even the Komodo dragons belong to the genus Varanus, and its scientific name is albigularis, which translates to white-throated, yet it's still called a rock monitor. Now, sticking with the reptiles, I mentioned the vine snake, and we had a couple of questions about a vine snake, and I wanted to show you. This was a vine snake I found behind my house in a raisin bush. It was pure miracle, pure chance that I found it, because it moved at that moment I was looking into the raisin bush. And it's not easy to photograph this kind of snake in its entirety. It has an incredible body that looks just like the branches, as thin as and as mottled and as colored or as camouflaged as the branches of the raisin bush. But it has a very intriguing head, striking eyes. It has a kind of face that even gives it, if I can show you this close-up of its face, it has this kind of look with this keyhole eye. Now, Craig mentioned something about the keyhole eye, but I'm not too sure. I don't know anything about why it has that keyhole-shaped eye. But that is characteristic of the vine snake. And it has this really cross-looking look about it. This is one of our most venomous snakes, but it is not a very aggressive snake. It's not a It's not irascible. It doesn't excite easily. It has a tendency to inflate its throat if it's threatened. And at no time during the time that I was photographing it did it even show me that it was threatened, even when I got the camera right into its face to take this close-up. And of course I got a lot more close-ups of it. There was even one moment when it turned to look at the camera. I must have maybe seen its reflection in the camera lens. Now I did take a photograph of the Mopani snake, or the southern bark snake, but I'll have to show you that at another time because I didn't manage to load it onto the camera today, or rather onto the computer. Excuse me. Now, the last few months I've seen some rather intriguing things, and one of the most intriguing that I've seen, and this is the first time I've ever seen it in my life. I was taking photographs of different things, and I had a friend staying with me. Actually, it's her birthday today. Her name's Callie. And Callie was, and then she called me over and she said, showed me the spider eating a dung beetle. I said, spider eating a dung beetle? Come on, get off here. But as I got closer, I noticed there was a little bit of dung and I couldn't even tell what it was. It could have been Janet, because it was very, very small. It was a tiny piece of dung, and obviously it had attracted a dung beetle. And I'm thinking that this dung was deposited near the spider's hole, because this is one of the free-range hunting spiders, it's one of the burrowing spiders. And this is the first time ever that I've seen one of these hunting spiders on a dung beetle. And I've actually got a couple of film clips that I'm not going to show you tonight, but maybe I can put it up on Facebook or something. Is how the spider lay underneath this dung beetle, sucking its juices out, injecting it with venom, digesting it, and sucking up its juices. And for the most part, every time I tried to get this dung beetle and the spider to turn, the spider would actually get back underneath the dung beetle. And I was wondering if that wasn't perhaps a defensive posture, also a way to feed on the dung beetle without being detected by something, especially a bird. Starlings are known for being very, very attentive. They find things that ants have found, and they will shake the ants off of whatever ants have caught to eat whatever the ants have taken, to steal the prey. And I kind of figured that maybe the spider was underneath the dung beetle as a protection, so that maybe a bird didn't see it. But this was right at this tiny piece of dung, and a dung beetle that just happened to choose the wrong piece of dung. But it was interesting. It was quite unique. And I don't think I've ever seen that before. I'm going to skip a dung beetle. I had a picture of a dung beetle. I'm going to skip that because we're getting close to the end. It was just a dung beetle that was quite strange. But I think what I want to show you is a ground longhorn beetle. And I know I've seen them on drive a couple of times, and I've shown you them on drive a couple of times. And if I can just show you, this is what it looks like in its entirety at first. And then I wanted to show you its alien face. And I think it's got one of the most alien-looking faces. I think if you had to design a beetle, if you had to try and draw a beetle, I don't think you'd come up with something like this. And it's the close-up picture that I took of this beetle, quite phenomenal. It reminds me of an alien out of alien movies. And, they're little robots, these dung beetles, or rather these longhorn beetles. It's kind of longhorn that has lost its ability to fly because it lives on the ground mostly. But quite an intriguing beetle nonetheless. Well, I was worried, as usual. I was a little worried that I wasn't going to be able to fill up a fireside chat, and I guess I have done, because I think it's coming time to end. We do have to get the vehicle on charge, and we've got a wonderful day ahead of us. There are a lot of elephant around. There's some leopards to find. And who knows, we might get some lion back again. There's also maybe signs of a cheetah. So do join us tomorrow morning again. And we're going to be going out at 6:30 instead of 6 o'clock. For those of you who don't know that our time has changed, we're leaving at 6:30 Central African time. And I will be behind the wheel. Hope you're going to join myself and Daniel, I think. And we're going to go out and see what we can find for you. Thanks for joining our fireside chat. Fires are getting a bit low. We're hoping to still cook on it. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Next Sunday, another fireside chat. From me, Mark, Daniel on camera, Craig and Tara in final control, Seb busy behind the computer doing editing, and Siyabonga busy doing some technical stuff for all of us, from all of us here. And wish you good night and have a good week. Bye for now.
Good evening, everyone. This is Craig in Final Control, and thanks for joining Mark for a very interesting fireside chat. And you can join Mark for the AM Safari, which will be heading out at 6:30 Central African time. But at the moment, the children are going to be cooking on the fire, and I will speak to you tomorrow morning.